Welcome to the TREPX Podcast. TREP is short for entrepreneur. One of the most meaningful and rewarding, yet difficult challenges you can take on. The TREPX Podcast gives you actionable insights, real examples, and success X factors from experienced entrepreneurs as we are learning, living, and sharing in the exciting endeavor of entrepreneurship. Now here's your fellow entrepreneurial traveler and host, Micky Deming.
Hello, this is Micky Deming, and you are listening to the TREPX Podcast, a podcast focused on helping entrepreneurs grow a business into something bigger than themselves that impacts their community. And I am so happy to share another episode with you today where I had a chance to speak with Chris Smith from the Campfire Effect. And wow, this interview blew me away. And one thing we all have in common, no matter what the business is, no matter what we're doing, one thing that every single business has to do and has to do really, really well is tell stories. They have to tell their own story. They have to know their clients' and customers' stories and how they are able to serve and help them. And that is exactly what Chris is an expert in and what the Campfire Effect is doing. And so in this interview, we talk about exactly how to tell stories that get messages across in a clear way that moves people to take action. And Chris actually walks through the exact framework that he teaches for telling stories, for communicating your brand story, and it is phenomenal. So you're definitely going to want to take notes and apply this immediately to your business. I'm very grateful for Chris and everything he shared. To see more about what Chris is up to, you can check out thecampfireeffect.com. And if you go to thecampfireeffect.com/success, he has some special downloads that you can take away after this episode. So had a great time talking to him. Check out the episode at trepxgroup.com where you can see all of our 60 plus episodes with successful entrepreneurs. And you can also see what we're doing at TREPX Accounting, where we're helping entrepreneurs grow into something bigger than themselves by simplifying their financials and making it more clear. So check that out. Check out this episode. Thanks again to Chris. And without further ado, I invite you to please enjoy this episode with Chris Smith. Hello, Chris. Welcome to the TREPX Podcast. How are you doing?
Man, I'm great, Micky. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be on.
I am very excited. There's nothing I love more than sitting around the campfire and having some s'mores and hanging out. So I'm pumped to hear about how you help people create that atmosphere in their world. And so I guess we'll start there. Your business right now, the Campfire Effect. Can you just give us a big picture of what that's all about and what you're doing with that?
Yeah, so the Campfire Effect, we teach entrepreneurs and their teams how to tell their story in a really powerful way so they can do three things: get more clients, build a stronger culture, and make more of an impact. And one of the things that's fascinating to me is that as entrepreneurs, there's one thing that you're going to have to do multiple times a day for the rest of your business life. And that is, you're going to have to talk about what you do. You're going to have to tell your story. Whether it's telling your story to prospective customers, whether it's telling your story to your team, but it's this language of storytelling that we use, and we do it every single day, but so few of us as entrepreneurs are really intentional about it. It's one of the few things that surprisingly, that we invest in. As entrepreneurs, we'll invest in almost anything in our business: marketing, advertising, technology, websites, systems. But very rarely do entrepreneurs invest in knowing how to tell their story more powerfully. And it's the one thing they have to do every single day for the rest of their,
You're right. That's a great point. And it's interesting. I love it when you talk to people who they're an expert in something specific, and then you see how they do the thing that they're teaching other people how to do. So like people that have website businesses, sometimes they're like, yeah, our website is worse than all of our clients because we're spending all our time focused on our clients. And then for you, it's like, tell me what you do. And I love the way you share that. You have like these three things. These are three benefits that happen when you get this right. So it's fun to hear you tell your story, but it makes sense. And so with that, if people neglect it, people put it off, when you are intentional about it, like where do you start with something like that? Where do you start to uncover this to tell your story better?
Yeah, great question, because that's a big, I think, kind of daunting task when it comes to your story and your brand is there's a lot there, right? I mean, your story can span your entire life. So where do you start? How do you start? And so what we've tried to do, so the Campfire effect is our methodology, and we've created a framework, and there's really 4 parts to the framework. And within each of those 4 parts, there's different processes. And the idea is that we want to build a brand and a story that connects and flows in a way that, it's consumable and easy to understand by the people listening to it. And here's the goal of storytelling. The goal of storytelling is to be able to tell your story in a way that is so clear and so powerful that the person you told your story to can immediately go and reshare and retell it to someone else. And so where that all starts, though, is it really starts with who you are as the entrepreneur. And it starts with digging into your roots. So we're a big believer with the Campfire effect that your growth is found in your roots, meaning who you are, where you come from, your ancestors, your family. There's so much strength and power found in our roots because it literally has shaped who we are, whether we recognize it or not. And your roots are what I call the soul of your story. So many times as entrepreneurs, we want to get right into talking about what we do, focusing on our product or our service and focusing on the features of our product or service. But what people want to know, in addition to what you do, they want to know who you are. And we as entrepreneurs have a real habit of starting our story at the present day. So if I'm like, hey, Micky, tell me a little about you and what you do. You will more than likely start with, well, let me tell you about, Kahuna and our podcast TREPX. Let me tell you about that starting today going forward. But what makes your story so much more interesting and what allows me to connect to your story more powerfully is if you give me a little bit of the backstory, right?
Yeah.
How did it come to be? Why did you start it? Who are you and how does that relate to this business? And so we call it the 5 forces of storytelling. And these are the 5 things that have to be in your story, or that should be in your story if you really want to get clients, build a stronger culture, and make more of an impact. First, you have to tell people a little about who you are. And you don't have to give them your life's narrative or your life history, but like for me, for example, I tell people, hey, I'm a 5th generation native of Arizona. My family came to Arizona in 1877. I grew up in a ranching rodeo family. I have a really deep connection to my roots. I was fascinated with storytelling as a small child growing up around cowboy storytellers. My wife is my hero. She's always believed in me, and my 4 kids are my best friends. Right? That's a little bit about who I am.
Yeah.
And then the next piece is, what do you do? You got to tell people what you do. But here's my big thing, and you'll probably notice that I started off today when you asked me, hey, tell me a little about the Campfire effect. I started off with what we call our golden thread. So the golden thread is something we teach in our framework. And it's basically, how do you tell people what you do? But it has to pass 4 filters. It should be clear. It should be succinct. It should be thought-provoking. And most importantly, it should deliver a benefit. So when someone asks you what you do, don't tell them accounting or don't tell them consulting, right?
Right.
So when people ask me, what do? I say, we teach entrepreneurs and their teams how to tell their story in a really powerful way so they can get more clients, build a stronger culture, and make more of an impact. Yeah,
I love that. That was succinct. When you said it, I was like, hey, that was succinct, and I want more clients. I want better culture. I want more impact. I could tell that makes sense. That's a good frame. I'll let you keep going on the 5 forces, but I think that's a great key point in what you do is when I heard those benefits, I was like, oh, okay, that's, I think people grab onto that really quickly.
And I'm amazed, Micky, to that point, how many entrepreneurs I'll talk to. And at some point in time in the conversation, what they do comes up. I'm amazed. I mean, no joke, I would bet 95% of the time they don't tell me any benefit of what they do.
Yeah.
And it's not that your golden thread, it's not that it's going to make or break your entire business, but if you do have that short window of opportunity to tell someone what you do, tell them the benefit of what they could get from working with you.
Right. Well, and I think it goes back to your point at the beginning that I think is really, really key to this whole thing, and it's that people this is one of the most important things in your entire business, because you're saying it every single day, and it is your key to culture, key to revenue. But nobody sits down and takes time and says, what do we want that story to be? And so when you ask people, they're just saying whatever pops into their head. And so what pops in their head is, what that interaction is with people. And like you said before, it's the present day situation. And so it's not get better at responding to that question. It's no, actually take time and build this out. I think that's kind of what you're saying is it needs to be an intentional, well thought out answer.
Yeah, I mean, every networking event you go to for the rest of your life, you're going to get asked the question, what do you do? Now, most entrepreneurs hate that question. Most entrepreneurs will say that the question, what do you do, is the bane of my existence because I never know how to respond. And my thought is, well, then wouldn't you put some thought into it? Because you know you're going to get asked the rest of your life. And what are the great opportunities? I love getting asked the question, what do I do? Because I feel like I get to showcase my golden thread. And usually when I tell people my golden thread, they usually say one of two things. Well, hey, how do you do that? Or tell me more about that.
Right. That's great.
So the first force is who you are, a little bit. Second, what do you do? And there's a real science that goes into the golden thread. I don't want people to feel like, maybe get discouraged, like, oh, I just came up with that. I mean, that took me a long time of narrowing options and working on it to get to that. And then the third thing is, why do you do it? This to me is like, all things being equal, if I'm talking to a prospective client and another consultant that's talking to a prospective client that does something similar to me, all things being equal, it's whoever that person has the strongest connection to their why is who they're going to do business with. So if they feel like one consultant is doing business because they can make money, or they feel like my why is because I believe entrepreneurs were put on this earth to be powerful creators. And I believe that most entrepreneurs are so much more powerful than how they talk about themselves. And I want to unleash that power from them. That's why I do this, is because I'm tired of seeing entrepreneurs who are so much more powerful than their story that they tell people.
That's great. So yeah, the why. So like when you say what you do, and it's like I help you have more clients, more culture. Do you feel like it's incomplete at that point? These five forces. Like even if what you do is something I really, really am interested in, that if there's no why is that what you do, people are just gonna the depth that they're gonna be able to buy into it is a lot less.
Right, for sure. And the why isn't meant to be, again, this really long thing. It's just it's to give them context and to give them some purpose, that I'm not just doing this because it's a career or a job. I'm doing this because like I feel like I was put on the earth to do this. Like this, my favorite quote is by Mark Twain. He said the two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. And I tell people, like when I'm talking with people, I say, I was put on this earth to help people like you. I think people want to hear that. I think people enjoy knowing that this is a real deep, like, conviction for me, that I'm not just doing this because I can make money as a consultant.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. So it's who you are, what you do, why you do it.
And then the fourth force, which I think is the most misunderstood, and it's, I think, the biggest missed opportunity of all the five forces, is how you do it. Now, here's what I mean by that. If I was to ask you, Micky, hey, Micky, do you guys have a process that you use to get results for your clients? What would you say?
I'd say yes.
Yeah, of course. Every business has a process. Without a process, you can't get a result for your clients, right? Now, do you guys feel like, Micky, your process is somewhat unique for the industry, or is there a process through how you work with clients or your culture that's a bit unique in your industry?
Yeah, I think so. I think in the way we get people started and in the way we have ongoing education, I think that's a bit unique.
Okay. Now let me ask you this. Have you ever thought of naming that process or branding it and giving it its own brand?
Yes, I have. And I thought of it like 24 seconds ago whenever you were starting to lead down this path.
Okay.
But prior to that, no.
Here's what's so fascinating about that, Micky. We as entrepreneurs, most of us, really do have a unique way in which we do the how. How we actually get the result, for most of us, is pretty unique.
Right.
But because we don't brand it, we don't know how to articulate the how. When we show up to appointments to meet with prospective clients and we start talking to them about what we do and how we do it, we sound like everyone else and we get no benefit from this uniqueness of our process.
Yeah. And
as an entrepreneur, you probably take for granted that you have a unique process. To you, it's like, well, yeah, this is our process, but it's just, it's nothing special. It's just what we do. It's how we do it. Well, no, it is special. It is unique because it's how you're going to get a result for them. And
I love that.
A lot of times as entrepreneurs, we get stuck in the trap of talking forever about what we do. And what I've realized is most people don't really care to know a lot about what you do. They want to know enough about what you do to see if they're interested. And then what they really, really want to know, even if they don't know how to ask it this way, what most people are looking for is, can you explain to me how you do it? Because if I know how you do it, that's what builds confidence. Because if I have confidence in how you do it, then I'm going to write you a check and do business with you. And what I found is you don't have to tell them every detail of the how. You have to just simply let them know you have a process. So for us, right, I give them the who I am, I give them the what I do, the why I do it, and I say, and now how we do it is through a proprietary methodology called the Campfire effect. Now the Campfire effect is a 4-part framework we've created that systematically in modules takes someone through a process, and at the end of that process, they have their whole framework of their brand story. And the first pillar we start with is called root force. And root force is a 4-step framework within the Campfire effect. And that's really where we get into the nuts and bolts of teaching you how to be a powerful storyteller.
Yeah. This is like so eye-opening for me right now. I have so many notes, but I think that makes total sense, because if it's just like, how do you do it? And then you're just like, well, here are the 4 steps. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. It's just kind of a detail. But if it's like, this is the proprietary process that we run you through, and that has 4 parts in it, it does a lot of things, I think. For me as the potential buyer, I'm like, they've really thought this process through because it's got a name. It must be well thought out. And then I think and I know you'll get into this too with the culture, but I think when you as a team are able to break something down into its own brand, its own identity, I think there's a greater sense of ownership of that process. It's not just a series of steps to get from A to B. It is its own kind of living entity that you take care of. I mean, is that kind of how you approach it?
100%. Like our proprietary process, the Campfire effect, our methodology, it's got its own logo, it's trademarked, and it's something that's so easy for our people to like get behind and realize, like, this isn't just a gimmick, this isn't just, a sales tool. Like, this really is what we believe. Yeah. This is how we do it. And the other thing is, you want to talk about empowering your business development people, your salespeople, to empower them to go out and differentiate with a unique branded process. It's just, and what I found is, when I used to try and get into the how before I had a branded process, that's when I would lose people. I would talk for 30 to 45 minutes and try to articulate this really complex, confusing, we do workshops, we do in-person consulting, and it was just all over the place, and people were interested, but they couldn't quite grasp how we were going to do it. Mm-hmm. And when I went and took that 30 to 45 minute explanation down to what I literally just shared with you in a couple minutes, it was amazing, because people were like, okay, yeah, like, that sounds great. Like, what do we do next? And I was like, yeah, what do you mean, what do we do next? I mean, don't we have to meet another 2 or 3 times before you like understand what we do and how we do it? I mean, because like you said, people had confidence just by the fact that we had a process, that we thought it through enough to name it, brand it, trademark it. Like, this wasn't the first time we'd done this. And it was a huge driver of the culture, because one of the things I'm a big believer in with culture is that a lack of clarity promotes a lack of accountability. Yeah. And clarity promotes accountability. So the more clear you are as an organization about the 5 forces, who you are, what you do, why you do it, and then the how, and people can get behind that, it becomes its own, kind of form of people can align with that and buy into that.
That makes a lot of sense. I do have one quick follow-up, because one thing you said that was really interesting, that I think is a fine balance in this, where you talk about not making it gimmicky. Is that kind of an art form? Because I do think there would be a way to say, this is a proprietary thing, and people kind of see through it. Like, you're just putting a name on something that everybody does. Like, what is the trick to making it unique but not crossing that line into being kind of a gimmick?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in root force, root force is the foundational pillar of the Campfire effect. And within root force, there's 4 steps. There's brand journey, brand framework, brand DNA, and brand vision. The branded proprietary process and the golden thread fall under the brand framework. And it is by far the most meat and the heaviest part of the framework is that piece. Mm-hmm. Because you're right, this idea of having a proprietary process or a branded framework is like, it's the engine that generates all the revenue and makes it work and generates culture, right? Mm-hmm. So it's where we spend the most time with organizations, and it really is an art form to create a branded process that is authentic, that really is part of the story, that when you say it, it's going to build credibility and trust, not this, oh yeah, of course you say it's a brand proprietary, right? And so part of that though is, and I'll probably sound like a broken record on this podcast, but it's so much easier to create your golden thread and your branded process and these other components if you've spent time understanding who you are and connecting to your roots. This idea of connecting to your roots isn't just for individuals, it's for businesses. A lot of entrepreneurs that we work with that have been around 10, 15, 20 years that have successful businesses, somewhere along the way, they've lost a little bit of the connection to why they started their business in the first place.
Definitely.
They've lost a little bit of their identity of who they are, and they're so focused on what they do every single day to keep the doors open that when we go back and reconnect them to their roots, they start feeling feelings and thinking things that they haven't felt or thought since they started their business, and it's this birthplace of explosive creativity, and they reconnect back to their roots, and they get this sense of who they are. And so that when we get to the branded process, we really are creating a process that is really authentically aligned with who they are at the core. And I think that just comes through in the story. There's also some art form. There's a little bit of art form to obviously creating the story, but then there's also some art form into how you tell it and how you deliver it. So I could deliver a branded process to you that comes off really gimmicky in just how I say it and how it flows in the context of the story. And then I could take that exact same branded process, deliver it differently with flow in the context of the story, and it would seem totally authentic.
Yeah, I think everything you're saying goes back to authenticity. It just seems like, and I want to ask you about this too later, just because sometimes I think people separate the culture aspects and the knowing yourself aspects and then the sales aspects. But I really think it's all the same. And that question of like, does it feel gimmicky? It's like, really, I think probably just comes down to, do you believe in it? Like, do you believe that it works? Do you believe it's unique? And if you don't, then it probably is gimmicky and will come across that way. And if you're bought in and you know that you've put in the work to make this stand out, that your communication is going to align that way too. It's like really all this communication is for yourself first, and then if you get that right, you'll get it right speaking externally too.
Well, yeah, and one of the things you reminded me of, you brought up there, is one of the things that makes your branded process or your methodology so powerful is the fact that your branded process, like the Campfire effect for me, I didn't just wake up one day and create the Campfire effect. The Campfire effect was actually a culmination of about 10 years of observations and realizations and real life lessons and experiences, right? One of the things that we do a horrible job of as entrepreneurs, as I said earlier, we don't give people the backstory of the lessons we learned and the realizations we had along our path and along our journey that led us to this big breakthrough solution, which is our process. If people have context as to why you created your branded process or your proprietary methodology, then it really makes sense to them. If they're like, oh my gosh, so Chris, you mean to tell me for 10 years you were in industries like commercial real estate and insurance and the supplement industry, and you kept seeing over and over and over for 10 years entrepreneurs that just did not know how to tell their story in a powerful way. And over and over you saw organizations that just had these massive culture problems. So you decided to do something about it. Like, after seeing all of that and experiencing all of those things, you said, look, I'm going to do something about this. And that led you down this journey of creating your company, which led to the creation of the Campfire effect as your proprietary methodology. Okay, that makes sense. But if people don't have the backstory, then how do they put your breakthrough solution into context? Well, they can't.
Right. Yeah. Did you just sit with a notebook one day and think, what would be a good process that would help people? Okay, got it. I think that they all tie together. So this is really helpful. So okay, we are getting through the 5 forces that we're at: who you are, what you do, your why, how you do it, and then what's number 5?
So the 5th is, so the 4th, again, as I said, the most misunderstood, the 4th force of storytelling. The 5th is the most important when it comes to that final decision of someone's going to work with you or they're not. It's the capstone, and we call it social proof. And social proof is this idea that if you're going to tell someone who you are, what you do, why you do it, and how you do it, then wouldn't you want to end it with a time you've actually done it for someone else?
Mm-hmm.
And we have so many success stories as entrepreneurs. Like if I was to ask you right now, hey, Mickey, have you ever gotten a result for any of your clients? Do you have any success stories?
Absolutely.
Yeah, tons of them. And then if I was to say, okay, Mickey, how often are you using a success story when you're working with a new prospective client?
Yeah, not usually. We have them, on the website like everybody, but not introducing them as part of the story.
Right. And what a missed opportunity. If we're sitting there with someone that reminds us of a client we've successfully helped in the past, how powerful would it be to say, okay, I just told you how we did it. Now, Mickey, you remind me a lot of a client that we recently took through our process. Do you mind if I share their story with you and what we were able to do to help them?
Mm-hmm.
I promise you're not going to say, nah, no, that's all right. I don't want to hear it.
Right.
You're going to, there's nothing more you want to hear. Like, if I'm telling you that I've worked with a client like you and taken them through the process, and so I've got success stories around, smaller companies that are needing to tell their story and build their brand and startups. And then I've got success stories about, existing organizations where we've impacted their culture. And so depending on who I'm talking with, I might say, hey, you know what, Mickey, you remind me a lot of a company we recently helped called Connect. So Connect was wanting to, rebrand themselves. They'd been around for about 15 years, and they knew they needed to refresh. The industry they'd been in had changed, and they'd been for about 2 years had been trying to figure out how to rebrand themselves and tell their story and kind of refresh and be more relevant. So 2 years on their own, they've been working on this, and they were losing confidence in their ability to sell. Their salespeople didn't feel like they had a really compelling message. People weren't selling as a result. So they came to us. They went through the Campfire Effect workshop, and within 3 weeks, we'd created a new brand, a new name, a new story. We'd taken them through the Campfire Effect, and within 3 weeks, they'd created $7,500 a month of reoccurring revenue after 2 years of trying to do it on their own.
Mm-hmm. Right, the social proof makes such a big difference.
Yeah, there's nothing I can say that. And here's the interesting thing about social proof. It's used on us all the time, but we don't leverage it ourselves. So for example, like when I go on Amazon, I bought something for my MacBook Pro the other day on Amazon. I totally bought it based off of the reviews on Amazon. Right. I bought it because of social proof. When my wife and I are looking for a restaurant to go to, we usually pick restaurants based off of social proof. So social proof works, and I call it liquid gold. Like these client success stories we have, it's liquid gold because most of us let it run right through our fingers and down the drain. We have it, we just don't use it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing more powerful than to just know someone just like me has already been there before. That's people's fear. I mean, if it's something that's a commodity, then okay, I'll try it and see how it goes. But if it's a relationship, then there's a fear in that. There's a commitment, and there's no better way to kind of work through that than to understand like someone else has been there before. They've done it. They've gotten results, and there's their story right there. That makes a huge difference.
Totally.
So this is really great. I mean, this story framework, I think anyone listening to this will have a lot to work through, a lot to think through, and it's very clarifying. I sometimes, I get nervous in a conversation like this, like I'm going to get overwhelmed or I have all these new ideas and not know what to do with them. I think this is simple enough to kind of work through, and then to build on that. I think this is where I'm most intrigued, because when you shared basically what the Campfire Effect is all about and what you're doing, and it's helping people get more clients, helping them improve their culture, helping them have a greater impact. Do you think part of the problem in how people use this is that they separate those things too much? And I think specifically, people think getting clients is kind of one activity and one team, one focus area. And then on the other hand, there's like culture and knowing my story, and it's being separate. Do you think that's a big part of the problem, is like not working this framework, number one, but then number two, not applying it to all facets of the business?
I just have to laugh because absolutely, and it's the biggest thing I think we run up against all the time, and I'm really just crazy about educating people on this, and that is, it all comes back to brand. And here's what, and sometimes people say, oh, Chris, you guys do branding, right? And I tell them no, because it depends on what you mean by branding.
Right.
The word brand and branding has been so ubiquitously used, and it means so many different things to so many different people on unfortunately, the term brand has really lost a lot of its sacredness and its meaning, and it's watered down. To some people, your brand is branding. It's your logo, it's marketing, it's advertising, it's your product, right? It's your branding. When we talk about brand, your brand is what you stand for. It's the soul of who you are. And so when we can get organizations to rethink how they define brand, and when they start to recognize that their brand isn't just external branding, but it starts internally first, and they start to realize, you know what, our brand, this idea of what we stand for and what we want to be known for, and the soul of our organization, they start to recognize, wow, that drives everything. So our brand drives culture. Our brand drives sales. Our brand drives the customer experience. And if we can get everyone aligned to what our brand stands for, then we can stop operating in silos in every department of our organization, right? And we can stop having like disconnection between culture and sales, because it is all connected. And the sooner organizations can get aligned to this idea of what their brand stands for and realize that brand drives everything. Your culture is a result of what you've decided to stand for. Your sales is a result of what you've decided to stand for. Your client experience is a result of what you've decided to stand for. And if everyone in the organization has agreed, this is what we stand for, and we have absolute clarity, now we're going to hold each other accountable to that. I think one of the biggest dangers is a separation of, well, we've got our external brand, marketing and sales. We've got these internal cultural problems and they're different. No, they're not different. They're completely connected.
Yeah, no, I think that totally makes sense. And I think everything you've said this whole time has just, I think, made that very clear, that these things are connected, and that the more unified everyone is, whether it's a small team, big team, that it's going to basically permeate through everything you do. And so I couldn't agree more that, you know, if your internal communication is bad, then your external communication is probably not going to be that good either. And so those things all tie together. And so I guess as we start to wrap this up, one question that I think people will have is like, you know, and I'm sure this is probably the biggest thing you work through all the time, is like, okay, where do I start? How do I implement something like this? I'm constantly moving forward. I'm constantly still doing things. What do you recommend as a good first step for people who are like, you know, I have gotten away from my roots. I have gotten a little bit off track in clarity. Where's a good place to start, you know, pull this message together as a business?
Okay, yeah, great. The very best research department that every organization has is their clients and their frontline employees. So when I want to do workshops, oftentimes I'll ask leadership teams, I'll say, hey, where do you guys think the best ideas come from within your organization? You know, the best ideas for growth, innovation, improvement, all these things, all these positive things, where do you think they come from? And the leadership teams will always say, oh, from our frontline people, because they're in it every day. They're seeing it from the customer's perspective. I'll say, okay, yeah, I agree with that. I'll say, so if the very best ideas for growth, innovation, good things are coming from your frontline people, then how often are you reaching out to those frontline people for ideas? And every time I ask that question, the room goes silent. And then shamefully, they'll always say, well, we're not. I say, so you mean to tell me that the one place where you know the very best ideas for your organization comes is the place that you are leveraging the least? And so the one thing I always encourage, and that we do when we're doing a 2-day workshop this Monday and Tuesday, clients coming in spending 2 days with us. And a couple of days I've been interviewing their clients, and I've been calling and interviewing some of their employees. If you really want to know what your brand stands for, and you really want to know what people think you do and think what your story is, call some of your clients and ask them. And they'd be glad to help you. They love feeling like they're part of it. They love being asked for help. So when we call and interview some of our clients, some of our customers or clients, we ask them things like, hey, what are the 3 things that you feel this brand stands for? Why do you personally work with this organization? What's unique about this organization? If you had to describe what they do, what would you say? And then when we interview their employees, similar questions. We say, hey, why do you work here? What makes this organization unique? what do you think this brand stands for that you work for? But then we also ask clients and employees challenge questions. We'll say, hey, what's most challenging about working here? What do you have opportunities to improve the brand and the story? Or we'll ask clients, what's most challenging about working with them? How can they bring more value to you? And every time we do this exercise, entrepreneurs are amazed at the insights that come out of this. Mm-hmm. And because these people have such a great perspective on your brand, what it stands for, maybe how you've gotten off track, how you've lost the way a little bit, right? Maybe you need to, you're lacking. That's one of the very first places I believe we should start, is by asking the people that have the greatest insight into our brand, what we do, our clients and our employees, our frontline employees. And the second thing I really encourage people to do is go back and think about, like, why did you start your business in the first place? And see if you can find a connection between who you are as a person, like your roots and where you come from, and see if you can find a connection between that and the business you do today. See, I teach entrepreneurs storytelling and culture. It wasn't until later in life, Mickey, that I realized I had been fascinated with storytelling and my roots ever since I was a kid. But once I realized that and I made that connection, and I made the connection between who I was as a person to the work I was doing today, it gave my work a whole new purpose and clarity and meaning, because I could see, like, wow, this isn't just a coincidence. This isn't just a career I fell into and I'm aimlessly working until I retire. Like, this has always been there for me. Like, these little dots have always been there. I just never was able to connect them.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent, man. This has been one of my most enjoyable interviews. I have so many notes and so many takeaways. I think this is powerful stuff. I think people will, just from this alone, be able to really dig deep into their, why they're doing what they're doing, how they're doing it, and ways to communicate that. So I'm really grateful for you taking the time. Where can people find all the info about everything you're up to and how they can learn more from what you're doing?
Yeah, and can I offer the listeners a gift, Mickey? Is that okay?
That'd be great.
So if you guys go to the Campfire Effect, a little bit tricky spelling there because it's Campfire Effect, 2 E's. So the campfireeffect.com/success. There's a little page we put up there, and there's a network, a small little video course that I put together for free. Anytime we do a podcast or work with a partner of ours, we offer this. But in that, I provide a little formula, a networking formula that I use every networking event I go to. I rarely go to a networking event and without getting clients or partners. The last networking event I went to was a 2-day networking event. And just by using this little formula, it's a video that I put together. Just by using that little formula, I think we'll end up doing about, $60,000-$70,000 in revenue. We've already done the most of that just by using this little formula. And it's just how to show up and be a powerful networking event. The other thing that's on there is you can get more information about our group coaching program that we do. And there's a code on there that if anyone was interested in our group coaching, there's actually a 50% off discount code. And again, we only share that with people that we do interviews with, our strategic partners. Cool. So the campfireeffect.com/success. I appreciate you having me on, Mickey. I could talk about this stuff, it's way too much. So
that's great. No, I love it. It's the passion comes through, and yeah, it's stuff we need to be talking about. So yeah, I can't thank you enough. We'll have that link in the show notes, and everybody can go check it out. So thanks a lot, Chris. You have a great day.
All right, you guys, thanks, and go start a fire.
Thank you for listening to the TREPX Podcast. For more episodes, interviews, and business growth tools, please visit trepxgroup.com.